Welcome back, everyone, to District Divided, Episode 3 on video. Joining me, the usual suspects, got Matt Regan, LC Lautaro Cabrera, Kadeen Wiggins, a.k.a. K-Dot, and Spencer Brudig, sporting a beautiful hoodie. It's good to see you all, and we've got a lot to talk about. There it is. Shout out District Divided, the podcast you're listening to right now. We're going to be talking about Russell Westbrook versus Stephen A. Smith. That grabbed a lot of headlines this past week. Then we talk about the Nats. We'll give you a brief season preview. Happy opening day, except they had a bit of a COVID outbreak. So we're not starting just yet with the Washington Nationals. We got Kadeen Wiggins giving us a movie review. Very excited to hear about that. We got the Baylor UConn women's basketball game, Elite Eight. There was a huge no call. UConn wins 69-67. We discussed that as well. May even get into a little bit of Suez Canal stuff. And finally, we will talk about March Madness, everything March Madness. Shout out the Michigan Wolverines. One hell of a run. I mean, Juwan Howard was named Coach of the Year, AP National Coach of the Year this past season. I'd say they overachieved. Matt, did you want to say anything about the Wolverines?
Oh, I thought you would never ask.
I didn't know that you'd ask him to speak for an hour. Okay, go ahead.
Obviously,
We are a Michigan podcast. Go ahead. Now we're not.
I would say great run.
This is over.
Disappointing ending. You know, we picked seventh to win. You know, seventh in the Big Ten preseason. Ended up going to the Elite Eight, and that's without our leading scorer. Props to UCLA, Johnny Juzang. Went off against us, but. I think they're going to get smoked by Gonzaga. I think we would have had a very tough time with Gonzaga. So disappointed that the way it ended, but really, really good season, and we'll be back next year.
I honestly think Hunter Dickinson would have elbowed the crap out of Drew Timme out of frustration in that Final Four game. Gonzaga looks so good against USC, and Drew Timme is such a little prick. The way he just celebrates after everything, Hunter definitely would have gotten a flagrant too. That's my call there.
Well, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
That's the best kind of take. The take that it can never be checked. That's what you always have.
Well, I need those because my Final Four was an absolute disaster. Now Baylor could still win the whole thing. We'll talk about March Madness later. Let's begin with our very own number 4 on the Washington Wizards, Russell Westbrook. He had a historic triple-double the other night against the Indiana Pacers in a 132-124 victory. 35 points, 21 assists, and 14 rebounds. Lots of people impressed with the numbers. We're always impressed with the numbers when it comes to Russell Westbrook, except Stephen A. Smith does not give a damn. His words. He does not give a damn because we've seen this with Russell Westbrook before, and he goes, where's the chip? Where is the championship? He has underperformed his entire career, essentially. Now, there was a bit of a clapback from Russell Westbrook himself, saying that he's a champion of life. He came from the streets, and now Here he is in the NBA, a former league MVP, doing his thing, and he loves to give back to his community. That's what makes him a champion. Nina Westbrook, his wife, backed him up as well, saying, tired of the outside noise, Russell is a champion of life. Kadeen, starting with you today, what are your thoughts on Russell Westbrook, Nina Westbrook, against Stephen A. Smith?
It's one of those situations where everybody's right? So it's like, it's one of those things where you can't necessarily take sides on it. It's just a re-gauging of priorities, right? So like when Westbrook had the big game, my phone goes off. One of my buddies calls me. He's like, hey, did you see Westbrook's game? And after we go about how amazing it looks and how amazing he did his job, the next question was, well, you know what? It actually helped us win this game. Compared to the numbers that he gets, they're usually empty and they don't really help anything as far as the win-loss column. So it's one of those things where, like, look, you never want to hear if you're a fan of a team that your star basically says he doesn't give a shit about a championship because he's winning off the field or off the court. Like, great. Nobody's taking anything away from Russ as a man. Stephen A. Smith even has said it himself. Like, he's a champion in so many ways. He's one of the most humble guys you can look at to respect just the way that they operate in life. You can look at him and say, all right, this is a dude that I want to follow, right? But you'd be remiss if you didn't look on the court. He hasn't done what it takes to win these championships. He just hasn't done it. I mean, you look at all the times he gets bounced out of the playoffs with help or without help. It just doesn't work out. Now, I mean, right now, if you're looking at where the Wizards are, am I expecting a championship this year? Hell no. So, I mean, all the criticism that Stephen A. or anything, you're like, oh, great insight, Stephen. He's not going to win a championship this year. Fantastic. So, but if he's putting up good numbers and he's showing out and being a good leader for the other guys on that roster, and that's the most you can really expect out of him right now. So I get Stephen A. trying to be speaking all hyperbole and all this shit to get the ratings up. He's not wrong as far as Russ in his career, but let him go. Let him just enjoy the time he's having right now. Because we ain't winning shit. So let him do what he needs to do to entertain us and also do the things off the court that he usually does that propels us into the future. I mean, as a black man, I respect the shit out of Russ. I respect a lot of what he does, and he will always be a leader and an icon in my eyes, even if he doesn't bring a championship to Washington, because I think it's damn near impossible to do.
There was one thing that I really disagree with the take though, which was when he started by saying like, this doesn't impress me because that's what Russell does. Like, I think that part is bullshit. I mean, like I don't know, like if Tiger Woods makes a hole-in-one, you're like, yeah, well, that's just what he does. That's not impressive. Like, no, that's bullshit. Like, that's still an amazing accomplishment. You don't need to minimize it. Yeah. That part of it, I was like, I don't understand why you would minimize it. I mean, the fact that that's what he does is the impressive part. Like, that's what we should be impressed by.
And not to mention, he's gotten back to averaging a triple-double this year with the Wiz, and we've just become so normalized to that stat line. That being said, it is like, again, taking nothing away from Russell Westbrook. He has already said, I'm a champion of life. He has overcome a lot. But like, if that's your first argument, that's what you go to. It's not like I've worked on this or like I have actually won all this stuff. Like if you come back with like talking about your off-field stuff, it's like, it always brings me back of like when you have a coach, it's like, oh, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Well, that means he's probably not a great coach, right? So like if your first argument is to go, to talk off the court stuff, while that's amazing and like he's done everything, it probably means you have your shortcomings, off the pitch. You're kind of like not even really arguing back. You're arguing, kind of coming up with a new argument to fight with. So that's where I'd say is like, all right, yeah, Russ, you're right. But like, Kadeen, I think as you're saying, like fans don't really care about that as much. We want to win.
Of course, as fans, we always want to win, right? Hearing Russ say, I'm a champion of life, he's right. First of all. And so I agree with Kadeen that, both sides are right. Now, would I say he doesn't give a shit about a chip? No, I do disagree there. I think he absolutely cares. He can't say that on this Wizards team. It's way too difficult to do. So if he suddenly goes out and goes, yeah, I'm going for it, it's an easy rebuttal for Stephen A to go, then what the hell are you doing on the 17-28 Wizards in third to fourth to last place in the Eastern Conference? Now,
but I think one last thing.
Go ahead.
The one thing I will say as far as the Russell Westbrook deal is that Stephen A. Smith has a sports show, same way we do a sports podcast, right? So this is what we're talking about. But in the grand scheme of everything, sports fans, fanatics, everything, it's stupid as shit. Being a sports fan is dumb in the grand scheme of life, right? Like if you're talking about Russell Westbrook doing what he needs to do as far as putting money in the community, producing movies and documentaries to help elevate black people, yeah, I take that over a fucking championship. But the way that we have things prioritized in our heads, it's just ridiculous. Like if we're really looking at it, I will always, like, I'm a sports fan. I'm wearing a freaking Nats jersey right now. I'll go to some Wizards games as soon as I get my freaking vaccine. Like I know, but you got to kind of put everything into perspective. In life, Russell Westbrook is the man. On the court, which matters a lot less than anything else matters. But maybe to us because we do a sports show, maybe to Stephen A. because he gets a salary because of sports. Okay, I understand that being the thing, but just put it in perspective.
But I can totally understand. Where Stephen A. is coming from, right? Because when he brought up the 30.4 3-point percentage and playing in the West, right, in his previous years against Dame Lillard, against Steph Curry, looking at them and not improving that 3-point percentage, right? And then the notion, Stephen A. is right, the notion that, hey, if he had improved that 3-point shot, maybe they don't lose when they're up 3-1 against OKC. That doesn't cause KD to leave. Maybe they become the present-day Brooklyn Nets. It was an intriguing notion to me as a fan. Now, when we look at it from a life perspective, Russ is absolutely winning. Does he care about a chip? Absolutely he does, and I'm sure he would love one, He could easily end up going to one of these teams, but he's in the twilight of his career. He's now probably more focused on other things. But he still gives 100%. Let's not get that twisted. That stat line, It's the first time ever for a reason, because that's what he does. He yammed on that dude with 35 seconds left. He doesn't care how much time's left. He doesn't care what the score is. He's giving you 100% all the time. His teammates love him, as people have said. I have no problem with it. I think both sides are correct here. Spence, what were you saying?
I think also, I mean, there's an even smaller, bigger discussion, right? We're talking about life versus sports, but even within the sports community itself, right? I mean, I think little kids, when you start off playing sports, you don't really care about how many rings people have. That grows in us. Like as we get older, it's like, oh, becoming elite, and like we always have these conversations of who's the greatest of all time. But for a lot of sports fans, especially children, they don't care about that. I mean, Steve Nash never won one. Charles Barkley never won one. But lots of kids growing up, they might idolize Jordan, they might idolize Kobe, and we, as people that talk about sports, we always that killer instinct, that killer attitude. Westbrook said himself in his clapback, like, I don't have the same drive to win multiple championships as some other people. He said that himself. I think that was evidenced by him signing a contract with OKC. He stayed in a smaller market, and that's okay. And I think that the question becomes, even not looking at just the life versus the on-court stuff, even as an athlete, there's things that juxtapose as people care about more mental health issues, and like, do we prioritize these athletes that are under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress? Do we prioritize their well-being as human beings, or is it about the business side where they've signed these $1 million contracts, these huge contracts where money's on the line, not just for them but for their whole city? And all of these things butt heads, and it's one of those things that sports, it's never going to get answered.
I think you're sort of kind of touching on like how can somebody provide value? And a lot of times we only think they can provide value by winning a championship, right? Like that's their only way to say I was valuable for this organization. And like, not just with Russell, of course, there's a lot of players who have never won a championship and have still been, legendary. You sort of fall into this narrative, which is reminding me of so many other conversations. The LeBron versus Michael Jordan. If you go to soccer, I'm from Argentina, the Messi versus Diego Maradona discussion, right? It's the same thing, right? Like, what did they win? And a lot of times, I think you're right. We sort of lose track of, what is sports and what are we trying to do here at the end of the day? But I think with Russ too is, like, the other juxtaposition with Russ is that it looks like, and he proves every day that he has the talent to be that guy, right? To be that guy that takes you to a championship. And so when that doesn't happen, it feels like the deficit is some sort of mental or some sort of, like you said, attitude or some sort of drive, because clearly he's got the talent, right? He's got the basketball skills to do it. And so I think that's maybe why he falls into so much attack, because it's like, look, you've shown me you can do it. Why can't you just do it on demand when the game is on the line?
Exactly. And I think that's where Stephen A is coming from, right? His job is to generate headlines and is to give the fan perspective and his own perspective on what a player can be. And he gushed over Russell Westbrook, even when it was a frustration of, I see how much talent you have. I see how explosive you are. I see the numbers you put up. And if you had just developed that 3-point shot, because I know you could, right? I know you could have back then. If you had, and this is a question for you guys, real quick.
Who does Stephen A consider himself closest to as far as NBA players over history?
I don't know. He name drops a lot.
But it's probably the biggest comparison, especially after what Spencer said, is AI. It's Iverson. Iverson's the guy that Stephen A continuously goes back to. Iverson's a dude that doesn't have a championship, but there are two lanes that I remember growing up with. You were either an Iverson guy or a Kobe guy. And I put Iverson as being more influential basketball players playing in the league right now than Kobe ever will be. I mean, the Mamba mentality goes outside of anything with the NBA. I think that's something special, something different. But as far as basketball players, as far as the style at which you come on that court, the way you wear your shorts, the way you carry your swag, the way you put everything on that line when you're on that court is Russ. And Russ is going to be highly influential for a lot of kids going out. The dude is winning on the court and off the court. Do I want a championship? Yeah. And I can understand Stephen A even being frustrated, being that he's an Iverson guy, saying, hey, you could do something differently than this dude did, win something. I can even understand that frustration, but I just want everything to get put in proper perspective.
That's fair.
I think you nailed it. But the one question I did have for you guys, and this is, again, just more notional than anything, is let's say that Russ did have that three-pointer, let's say he was at around between 35, 37%, something like that, instead of the 30%. How do you think, like, where does he rank in point guards for you right now? If you could name some off the top of your head.
Like of this decade, I would probably put him third behind Steph and Harden.
And so that's crazy, right? So like out of nowhere, all of a sudden, and I think that's totally reasonable. And you could even argue you could put him higher. And I think that's where Stephen A is coming from. It's just the amount of talent that Russ possesses. I think are you saying to see them?
Are you saying if he could shoot a three, or given his current? If he could shoot a three, he'd be the best.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, I think that's where the frustration for Stephen A as a fan comes from, right? He sees all this talent and he goes, man, like this guy could have been the best. He is a good distributor. He is a motivator for his teammates. He is explosive at the rim. It doesn't matter who's there. He's going to dunk on you, or at the very least attempt to. And then he can shoot threes too. Like OKC definitely wins a chip, in my opinion.
You can't live vicariously through another man like that. Like you can't put your own what it is you want somebody to do on them if that's just not how they're rocking.
And also that it kind of seems like that. I understand the question, but at the same time, like Steph Curry can't yam the ball like Westbrook, and so he developed other aspects of his game because he didn't have those abilities. I think to say like Westbrook grew up being able to do that, and so he said, I'm just going to dominate everyone by doing the things that I am good at. Why would he? I mean, you could say that about any you could say that about any point guard. I mean, look at Giannis. If Giannis developed a three-point shot, he'd probably be the greatest player of all time. But he's never going to.
But he's getting criticism for it, you know. I mean, like, and people are saying that's why they haven't won. I mean, again, I think people are pointing at like single skill sets. That's not necessarily why they haven't won. Like things haven't gone their way. They've obviously all been close. Like, you know, it's easy to put it into a binary perspective where you're a champion or you're not. You know, in reality, they've all done everything to get there. But yeah, I mean, Giannis is getting criticized for in this day and age not developing a three-pointer to where he should be for his caliber of player.
Speaking of championship expectations, if the Nets, who just got LaMarcus Aldridge, do not win this year, man, I hope they just get made fun of for the next decade at least.
I don't think they're going to.
Dollar bet. Oh, dollar bet?
Absolutely.
What is this team?
Yeah, I'll take it.
I got Philly.
How many? Yeah, how many teams that are made at the trade deadline have ever won? I feel like there's zero.
But there's not been a team like this.
I also don't think they were made at the trade deadline.
Dude, there have been teams like this.
Yeah, there have been teams. Though, I mean, yeah.
Okay, I will say this: if LeBron comes back from injury and beats that Nets team in the finals, the discussion about Michael and LeBron should be over.
I agree.
Over?
No matter what.
Over?
I agree.
If LeBron comes back,
I don't think it should be
that
over.
Team,
I don't think it should be over.
That's it.
I think it should
end
be
of conversation. You're from Michigan, doesn't count. Ohio.
No. I like LeBron. I'm a LeBron fan.
I'm hopeful that argument itself goes away. I've now developed a philosophy on you can't say greatest of all time because of how different the game is. You got to say greatest of an era.
Fair.
And I think LeBron is the greatest of this era. I think Jordan was the greatest of his era. But there's too many. Unless there's somebody that just comes out and just puts it. The only argument I listen to at any sport is Babe Ruth being the greatest baseball player of all time. The only reason that I listen to that argument is because his stats back then blow so many
stats.
They blow everybody out of the water so badly that you're like, all right, if he had access to HGH and not 10 hot dogs before a game, like maybe. Like, Lord knows what that would have been. Like, that's just universal, right? Tiger Woods is going to be easy to say. You can say that stuff, but
you're right.
It's a totally different game, man. It's a totally different game.
I agree. I think that happens in so many sports too. Like, I mentioned Messi and Maradona. Like, that's a lot of times we fall into that. It's a different sport these days.
Yeah, fair enough. And now moving on, but let's stay on the court, gentlemen. The Baylor UConn ending was a hot, controversial topic. It was women's basketball tournament, the Elite Eight in Texas. And what ended up happening was 68-67 UConn. In the dying seconds, Dejanay Carrington for Baylor drives down to the left, shoots a jumper right around the paint area, gets fouled, clearly fouled when you look at the still images as well as the video, by two different players. Now, we know about whistle swallowing. right? That happens at the end of games. But this was, to me, egregious. What did you guys think? Elsie, I'm going to begin with you here.
I think there may be a college basketball rule that I'm not aware of, that 2 fouls make no foul, like they cancel each other out. Because that looked pretty clear. I mean, I did hear somebody say that like the no call was consistent with how the game had been officiated. So like I guess they sort of allowed a physical game, but that A, that's still a foul, and B, if you've been allowing that the whole game, then you miss more than one call. It did look like a foul. LeBron said it's a foul. That's enough for me, man.
He's the go. He's the go.
Go ahead, Matt.
I would say, yeah, it was more physical, but like I think physicality in basketball games doesn't impact like fouls on shots. You know what I mean? Like those are called just if the refs see them or not. I think physical ones are like blockings versus charges, or like rebounds or over the backs. Like I think those are kind of the more important ones. Fouls on shots, I mean, that was clear cut. You know, and you just like it would suck to end your career like that. You know, your college career, and you know, it just ended someone's. But and basketball is, I think, the sport where they don't swallow whistles that much at the end. Like you see plenty of times people go to the hoop, and I shouldn't go for a layup, but I don't. They do call fouls quite a bit.
I have to say also, I would feel comfortable reffing some sports. Basketball is not one of them. Like when it is live, I cannot see what's a foul and what's not. Even like sometimes even in the slow, not in this one, but like that is a hard sport to ref live, to be honest. Like just given that, like, you know, that
absolutely no, the speed
it's
of
a mistake,
play,
but it's a very hard sport.
Speed of play, freak athletes. I mean, you can say that about a lot, but I think basketball, you probably have the best athletes in the world going at it. That is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Now, real quick, would you say Baylor got screwed? Last question. Would you say Baylor got screwed by the refs?
I mean, it's a 2-point game. It's a 2-point shot foul. You do the math.
I actually say they didn't. I think that they missed the call for sure, but I think calls get missed all the time. UConn went on a 19-0 run beginning of the third quarter. Find a way to slow that shit down too.
Okay, well, that's did they lose the game only because of the foul? No.
That's what I'm saying.
But if that's called a foul,
but you're still getting screwed over.
Yeah, you're definitely. How are you not getting screwed over? It was the ultimate. Is the penalty?
I don't know. I think you end up putting it in the hands of refs. You know,
of course,
that's just too difficult.
Of course, they should have hit more shots on it. Of course, but like when you had such a clear cut,
I think they got more unlucky because they ended up losing Dee Richards, who was guarding Paige Beckers, who is a beast, by the way. She was guarding Paige Beckers, and they were up 10 when Dee Richards went down in the third quarter, and that's where it really fell apart for Baylor. I think if she doesn't go down, I think Baylor wins. We're not even talking about this. Baylor ends up moving on to the Final Four.
I'm not sure if this actually matters, but I was kind of reading and thinking about this of like if the play. Listen, I'm not a great athlete. I'm not playing at a high level, but at the same time, like I my thinking, I was like, how can they swallow the whistle on that? It was very clearly a foul, but since it was kind of I don't know if you want to say like it wasn't an aggressive take to the bucket, that like it was kind of like she kind of moved like in a direct line, and then she kind of got stuffed and was like kind of hoisted it over her head. Yeah. I was kind of thinking, well, maybe if she went to the bucket and then she was getting grabbed, it would have been like insta foul call. But because it was a weak offensive play of like, hey, I'm just going to go for it and we'll just see where my body ends up, that maybe that's why it was a non-foul call. But I don't know if that matters.
No,
that was a foul in my book, but.
Right, but I think you're right. I think if it were a stronger take to the rim, odds are you end up getting the call. But now it is time for your movie review. Kadeen, what do you have for us today?
All right, so because nobody's still going to movie theaters, and Netflix and all these other streaming services are doing it all big, right? So I watched the other night Bad Trip. Now, Bad Trip is a movie along the same lines or in the vein of like Jackass of old. Or
is this the title or your review?
It's called Bad Trip. I mean, depending on who you are, they could say that it does, but I'm not going to give away what I think just yet. But it's the dumbest story maybe ever in movie. It's just so simple. Goddamn, it's a dumb story. I can't tell you enough how stupid the story is. But that's not why you're there. All right, the story. I mean, the elevator pitch. Guy sees a girl that he had a crush on in high school. She lives across the country. They do a road trip so that he can have the I love you moment with her. But do you guys know who Eric Andre is?
Yeah.
All right, so if you're familiar with Eric Andre's humor in like his show that he had on Adult Swim, where it was just the most almost Dadaism in the sense of like just pure chaos. Imagine that chaos being unleashed among unwitting people, unaware Americans living their daily lives. It's just the wildest shit you've ever seen in a movie happens to real people. It's just insane. Tiffany Haddish does an amazing job in the movie. I will say overall, it's the hardest I've laughed at a movie in maybe 10 years. It's just hard. It's hard to do.
Wow.
But it's because it's one of those throwback comedies. I'm 32 years old. I grew up on Jackass. I grew up on Adult Swim. It's a very, very small section of the audience.
That's a niche,
it hit me perfectly. I think that there are going to be some people that might listen to this review and check it out, and they're going to hate it, and they'll never listen to anything else like that ever, which I totally understand. But it's well worth watching. Bad Trip. If I get four stars, I'll give it out of 4 stars. I'll give it 3. I'll give it a solid 3. I mean, it's a comedy. It's sitting, I think, at 70-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is almost unheard of for a comedy. So I'm just saying, it's worth checking out.
Now, did you be an Eric Andre fan?
I'd say more if you, you gotta kind of like Eric Andre, even though he reins it in just a bit as far as who he is. It's just the antics themselves are like, if Jackass even went too far with people, like that's kind of the lane that they're in. And I'm all there for it. And apparently, I was reading an article, the Eric Andre showed Sacha Baron Cohen a copy of the movie before it got released. And he says Sacha's just sitting there and he's watching the movie and he's soaking it all in. And afterwards, he's kind of scared to ask Sacha what he thought. And Sacha just breaks down to some philosophical thing about how his movie takes on the oligarchs and now he's shown a slice of life of the American culture. Apparently, he loved it. And Eric Andre just thought he made a fart, dick, and shit joke movie. But it is what it is. I mean, you can look for art in deeper meaning.
Look, if we had the Brutix for the restaurant, I feel like we should have K-dots for the Brutix.
How many K-dots?
How many K-dots do we get? And what's the scale, right?
What is
can we also talk about how Kadeen said it was the hardest he's laughed in 10 years and he gives it a 3 out of 4?
Hey, 3 stars is good, man. That's a good movie rating.
All right, but here's the other thing. I'm a cinephile, all right? I'm a full-blown cinema geek, nerd guy. I tried to convince my girlfriend 3 days ago that Miami Vice, the movie remake, is a masterpiece because I'm looking at the cinematography, okay? So I'm just saying, I can admit when I like something, but it's not necessarily good art. I own every Britney Spears album. I'm not proud to admit that, but I do own every one. And there's a reason. I just enjoy fist bumping and listening to her music as I'm driving down the street.
I love it.
Not high art, but I do enjoy it.
Okay.
So 4 dots is like prime Britney.
Yeah.
3 dots.
The 3 out of 4 is like, that's your professional reviewing of it, but your personal satisfaction would be a 4 out of 4?
Would be a 4 out of 4. Personal satisfaction would be a 4 out of 4 just because in these dark times where you just turn on the TV and there's nothing but bad shit happening. I mean, on a serious note, I don't even want to turn on TV because the George Floyd thing is happening right now. I don't want to watch anything. So, like, if something takes me away and I can escape and really escape for an hour and a half, kudos to you.
I mean, that's what we're doing right here, so that makes total sense. Now, so you would say for your own self, 4 out of 4. Projecting for the people, the masses as a whole, 3 out of 4.
Projecting for the masses of people, 3 out of 4. Projecting for Gen Z, snowflake assholes, 1 out of 4. They're not going to get it. They're not going to be okay with it. They're going to talk about the longest reason why it's problematic, and fuck them. I don't care about them.
Have any of you guys seen this movie besides Kadeen?
No.
Okay. Are you now more inclined to check it out because of this review?
Yes.
Yes. Matt?
I don't know. More inclined because of Kadeen's review for sure.
Yeah,
it's got 3 K-dots.
I would still say I'm like at a 33% chance to see it, but up from like 15% chance.
Now, just as a quick
double that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to check in, how sober should one be when partaking?
Oh, I didn't take that into account. I was high as shit. Ooh, I don't know. But here, with all my reviews, I will let you know whether or not I was inebriated or not, and what I was inebriated on. I will tell you, perfect weed combo. Especially if you get a good sativa going with it. I mean, it's just a nice balance.
It's just sharing his methods systematically. I love it.
You got to know how to enjoy a movie with K-dots going.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about experience. I got the popcorn machine and everything. We just do it big.
He meant it.
Well,
Cinema.
we were going to rotate movie reviews. That may just be your
never mind.
popcorn machine over here.
But if anybody wants to listen to my take on why Miami Vice is a fucking masterpiece, just let me know.
Okay,
So you're a big Michael Mann guy, huh?
Huge Michael Mann guy. He is the greatest. He is amazing. Top 5 favorite movie for me is Heat.
What is your favorite movie or favorite, like, give us, besides Miami Vice, what is another movie of yours that is your favorite?
By Michael Mann or just in general?
In general.
In general, my favorite movie of all time is Goodfellas.
Okay.
Favorite movie of all time
Great movie.
is like, I think the greatest movie of all time is The Godfather, Godfather 2. It goes back and forth for me, but I will be the first to admit, the same way I was talking about Bad Trip, The Godfather, you got to be in the right frame of mind. That shit gets boring. Like, you can admit that it's high art. You can admit that the acting is great, but there are some areas that are just low. Not to mention, this is just problematic shit. In the first Godfather, when he goes and falls in love with 13-year-old Apollonia, I want that just erased. In fact, Godfather 3 is an entire incest storyline. Like, what the fuck is that about? Like, Goodfellas is just a more enjoyable movie. It's not better, but it's more enjoyable. I appreciate it more.
All right, fair enough. So there you have it. Once again, 3 out of 4 for Bad Trip, but really 4 out of 4 for Kadeen's own level of satisfaction. Now, we're going to move on quickly to baseball, and then we're going to jump into March Madness. Today was supposed to be opening day for your Washington Nationals. They were going to play the New York Mets. Everyone was excited. And then all of a sudden, guess what? We still live in COVID times. 3 different Washington Nationals players have been tested, and well, everyone was tested, but they tested positive. And so the game got moved. It's not been moved to tomorrow. They don't know when they're going to move it just yet. We don't even know if we'll end up playing tomorrow. We will see what happens with the Nationals, but a quick season preview for them. We still have the baddest man in the league, Juan Soto. Spencer asked us before this, will he have the most nut grabs amongst all Major League Baseball players? The answers are resounding yes, and he's ours.
Amongst all athletes.
Amongst all athletes. That is him. Yes, the answer is a resounding yes. Now, how are the Nationals supposed to do this season? They picked up the likes of John Lester, Kyle Schwarber, Josh Bell, Brad Hand. They've picked up some nice names. They've picked up some all-star talent in Josh Bell, for example. But expectations are not high this year. According to The Athletic, they're supposed to finish in third to last in the NL East. ESPN doesn't have them that much higher. Guys, what do you think about the Nationals' playoff prospects this season? Matt, begin with you out here.
I would say I would agree. I mean, you said they're third to last in the NL East. They're also third to first, right? It's just a 5-team division. But
fair.
The Mets got a lot better. They got a new owner. They spent big time. So you would say they made the biggest jump. Not to mention with their loaded rotation. But the Braves won the division last year. They'll be good. And I think that's right there. So while I do think they are the third best team, I don't think there's a huge gap between 1, 2, and 3. I would say Phillies are definitely 4. Marlins definitely 5. Bryce Harper another year not going to the playoffs. So I think they're good. Juan Soto, who would have been an MVP conversation last year if he didn't get coronavirus or come in contact with coronavirus, but he was just short on games. Other than that, he had probably his best season on a per game basis that he's ever had. So I love Juan Soto. I think he's great for the game. We can maybe talk about that later, but I think they're going to be right there. Probably a little bit as an underdog, but I would probably give them a 25-30% chance of winning the division.
And I personally have no problem with the expectations set here by The Athletic, by ESPN, by the people, because the year we ended up winning, the expectations weren't very high. The previous season's expectations were high, and then you would have first-round exits, or we would just miss the playoffs. And the year we made it, it was totally house money. Funnily enough, same thing with the Caps. We didn't have much expectations for that team either. So sometimes expectations cool it a little bit. You don't always need expectations in order to have a good season, because next thing you know, we're in a playoff game, in fourth place in the NL. We go on to win it all against the Houston Astros, who cheated and still couldn't beat us in 7 games at their place. So I am not worried about these Washington Nationals. It is a long season, 162 games. I feel good about this squad. I am very, very excited. Kadeen, yes, 162 games.
Yeah, it's stupid.
I agree there. It is stupid. It's too many games. But
the one thing that works into our favor as far as the Nats go, and I'm high on the Nats, but I could also see the swing go either way. If you told me this is a 95 win team, okay. If you told me it's a 95 loss team, okay. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they could really, really swing back and forth. Because I remind you, they finished last year with a record of 26-34, right? But if you remember when we made that, I remind you of June 2nd, 2019, when we played against the Cincinnati Reds, and our record was 26-33, and we want to win the goddamn World Series. So I'm just saying, if there's enough time for that team to rock, I think we're all right. I chalk up last year as a complete wash and a loss. I don't care about last year. And the way that this season's starting out, I think it's going to kind of be up to the players and how it is they're operating. I mean, with them being so afraid of what would happen with Davey when it comes to COVID, when you got the new COVID stuff coming out, unless they haven't been able to do that, we're champions, we're coming back home and have our fans in the stands and ride with that wave. And I think they're kind of holding on to something until they get that back. So, like, right now, it's just asterisk time for me because I don't really count any of the shit that's happening with COVID because it just doesn't feel like it's the real thing.
And I believe Para is back as well, so we got Baby Shark back as well. We may just run this ship right on back this season.
It's just
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. But I'm with Kadeen that, like, within the first few weeks of coming from such an odd time, right? Like, they're not in any type of flow. And if you look at the first few weeks and try to project from there, like, it's just such bad data the first few weeks because it's such a weird time that it's not really going to give you whatever comes out after. And also, I need somebody to run the numbers on how much expectations match the actual results of every season for every team. It feels like if it's a little bit better than a coin toss, I will be impressed because it's just so much.
How about the NFL this year? I mean, they were saying Green Bay was going to be the worst team in the NFL.
Ooh,
right? I mean, I remember when. Yeah, I mean, on projections,
about?
they're in the bottom 5, and they were saying this is a bad team with a bad offensive line and an aging quarterback, and they were. I mean, Stephen A. was screaming about how they were going to be bad, and look at them, came out.
I don't know what was the worst prediction, that Green Bay would have been bad last year, or that Washington will be good next year.
Well, actually, so you know what's funny is I just realized that as we're talking about expectations and historically with the Washington football team, when expectations are where they are right now, I just realized I probably lost my dollar bet.
Right.
Even with the extra regular season
I don't
game. By
even
the
know
way,
what
there, 17 regular season games in the NFL now.
We're too young, Amit. That's the thing. It's a new day. It's a new day. With 91, when we ran it and won, we were looked upon as the best team in football. We are good. Trust it. Trust it, man.
I made the bet.
Dude, at least Lions fans know we suck. At least we know we suck.
You're used to sucking. Your entire city is terrible at every single sport they try.
We're so much more pieces. Okay, I'm not saying Detroit is a bad sports town. We're just in a rut with our other teams.
The Lions
all our other teams have had success.
With
the Lions
teams.
The Lions
I'm not talking about
suck. The Lions are bad. They're historically just shitty. Don't compare our franchises. They're not.
I can compare us over the last 20 years. Over the last 20 years.
Fuck no, you can't compare it even in the last 20 years. Matt Millen fucking ran organization. How many one-win seasons do you guys have? I don't want to hear your shit.
A lot of one-win seasons and
not a lot of one-win seasons.
How many Charles Rogers?
Well, right, because one of them was 0.
Draft in the first round before you realized not to pick up.
Just one. We just drafted one Charles Rogers. We drafted also Mike Williams.
Fuck that team.
And also Roy Williams.
You can't keep a goddamn legend to save your fucking lives. That's what Barry Sanders want nothing to do with you.
What? I'm not just gonna hear this.
I love where this is going.
What is the Washington football team done?
The worst thing that happens to America.
Fucking Patriots. All right, like we know we suck. We know we suck.
Having to watch the goddamn Lions
that doesn't know they suck.
All right,
that is more embarrassing and more sad.
It's the
like
worst
we wear
thing
the brown paper bags. We wear the brown paper bags. Like we wear the old 6.
Guys, I'm reeling us in. I'm reeling us in. I'm reeling us in. I'm reeling us in. The Detroit Lions are absolute ass. All right, cool.
I like the Thanksgiving comment.
Now, hey, listen, Michigan basketball. Let's talk about March Madness. Let's talk about it once again. Michigan. Let's just talk about one more failure. Michigan losing in the Elite Eight. A tragic loss to UCLA, 51-49, total of 100 points. A bit of a bummer. We are no longer a Michigan podcast. We have been released from our duties there. I'm sorry.
We're giving up the title?
We're giving up the title.
Until
there's nothing to root for.
Are we a Baylor? Are we a Baylor podcast?
We have to be a Baylor podcast because I could win money on Baylor. So the Final Four coming up, guys, in the men's tournament, a whole $1. Baylor against Houston, and both these games are on Saturday. Baylor against Houston on Saturday, and then we have the Juggernauts Gonzaga against UCLA, who have gone from first 4 to Final 4. The last team to do that was VCU. We're going to get into predictions, but real quick, is Gonzaga the best college basketball team ever from what you've seen? Because to me, they look absolutely unbeatable. I love the UCLA run. I think it's really neat for college basketball. I know it's a classic program, but who the heck's going to beat these guys?
Yeah, I mean, They do. They look like, I mean, every time I watch them and then you flip on the next game, it's like kind of the first time you saw the Warriors when they were buzzing. It was like they just play, ball movements there. You know, it's like Timmy, even if he's a little bit off, then they kick it out to Kispert. And then they're gonna have top 3 pick in Jalen Suggs. So it's like such a balanced team, and then they just have everyone else that can just rein it in. So they look unbelievable. It's clear that the team's back. I'm not saying that it's like guaranteed, but I would put them, you know, obviously now versus the field, but you know, I'd probably put them at 70% chance to win it all right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the District Divided Twitter account, I turned that purely into a Pac-12 thing. I was like, look out for the Pac-12, look out for USC specifically. And I was telling people, I was left, right, and center. USC, they got a shot against Gonzaga, and then I obviously doubled down. I was like, they are going to beat Gonzaga, and it looked like varsity versus not even JV, just 8th grade. It was crazy how much better Gonzaga was than USC. It was 7-0 in the first minute. And that might have been the closest it was the rest of the way. Like, it looked like USC was playing basketball for the first time ever. It was so weird. Everything was stolen. Everything was stolen from them. And then watching UCLA Michigan, yes, it's an Elite 8 game. It felt like a different sport. Like, it just felt like it was hard to watch the first 5-10 minutes of that game, having just seen what Gonzaga did. They are the best team in college basketball. If they end up winning, they, to me, are the greatest ever.
What about that Kentucky team? Was it 11 with Anthony Davis?
I mean, Anthony Davis was incredible. That was an amazing run they had. I don't think they could beat this team. Like, even with Anthony Davis, like, it's just one guy. I thought Evan Mobley was that guy for USC, number 2 projected overall. Current, sure. Current, absolutely. You know, you're talking about an old world talent.
But everyone stays the way they were, but then you add current Anthony Davis.
Did the Gonzaga team lose a game this season?
No. As of right now, no. So wow. UCLA's got a shot, and then the winner of Baylor Houston. I don't see it. I want Baylor to win. I think they play an exciting brand of basketball, and they have a lot of guards that are really, really good. So maybe. But they need to be at their absolute best.
They need Juzang to go off for like the equivalent of like 28, but when the score is like 90 to 90,
right?
He goes off for like
needs
50.
Going back to UCLA in the Final Four, Juzang needs 35. Jules Bernard needs to find that 3-point shot.
He had a tough game against Michigan.
And Jaquez also needs about 30. Like, they all need to be on fire. And Tiger Campbell needs to not turn the ball over for them.
I will say, and this is not particularly specific to basketball, but like, and I do think it's important for college sports that, like, in the very, very finals and championship games, and especially when you have all the expectation on you, the mental aspect takes such a protagonist role that could play. Like, you don't, of course, they have played it in some sort of pressure, right? But I was really interested, for example, watching the women's Maryland team who lost in a close game. Maryland. Who had a fantastic season, and I think it was one of the first times that they were being truly tested with a team that was, you know, hanging in close and playing very, very, very tough defense. And they had lost against them already previously in the season. The idea that, like, have I been tested at this level of pressure? Like, it seemed like Maryland was sort of falling short on that. And like, if Gonzaga gets into, like, you know, maybe they're not doing as well as they thought in the finals, maybe they're behind in the first quarter for some reason. Do they have that you know, experience? I've been here before. I know how to get out of this hole. Or do they crumble, or do they just, you know, infight?
The thing is, I thought USC was that team. I thought that was the team they may crumble up against because USC had this amazing defense that could maybe stand up to them and cause them to go, hey, we haven't been in a close game like this before. And it was anything but. That was such an impressive game.
Yeah, I think what else he's getting at, though, is that, like, they got off to a tough start. You know, they were never even put in that situation. So if you can get in there, you can just kind of get off to that tough start, or at least maybe keep it close through halftime, be a bit of a battle, you know. Yeah, I think it could.
And don't forget that, like, in the absolute finals, like in the championship game, like, the level of, it's just in your head, the level of pressure and the level of, like, expectation, especially if everyone's saying, like, you are the absolute best, you know, you will be the best team in college basketball that's ever played. Like, all of those added expectations, I think, weigh on players. And don't forget, these are young players, right? This is college basketball. Like, they may be more prone to this kind of influence from the mental aspect than some of the pros.
So what you're telling me, and I just want to make sure I've understood this correctly,
that
is that the Baylor Bears are going to go on and become national champions and win me not only $1, but $2, perhaps $3. The Baylor Bears have a shot at this. Go
I
ahead.
do have to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kadeen.
I was gonna say LC sounds like he should be working for the NCAA trying to hype up this goddamn game. In all honesty, trying to find storylines to make it worth watching. So bravo, man, bravo.
Hey, I can't get paid, so
The only stat that I'll throw out is that Baylor is number 1 in 3-point field goal percentage, and
Yes,
Gonzaga is 38th.
Okay.
So that's a big difference.
Okay, but a different stat I would say is that Gonzaga has not shot worse than 49.7% in any game this year. They've shot above
From 3.
No,
Could you imagine?
No.
But they're
Not
38th
from
in the
3.
nation.
Like they shoot 50% every game or better. Obviously,
that's
like
unstoppable.
yeah, they're
Now they went against some trash competition. Now they had a couple really good non-conference games at the very beginning, but the WCC, like it's BYU, it's Gonzaga. That's about it.
Yeah.
But they're still doing it in the tournament, and they just did it against USC, and that is what's scary. But like Spencer said, Baylor, number 1 in the nation, at least at the very top.
They're number 1.
They are the number 1 team, 3-point percentage. They've got a first-team All-American in Jared Butler. Davion Mitchell is one of the best on-ball defenders. A potential matchup with him and round 1 pick 3 projected Jalen Suggs is fascinating. I think the nation would really want to see Gonzaga versus Baylor. I have no doubt that Gonzaga will end up beating UCLA unless, like we said, Juzang, Jaquez, what's his name, Jules Bernard. Like they all need to go off. And I just don't see that happening. And then Baylor. I think it would be a fantastic game on Monday night. We'll see what happens.
I mean, that's the game everyone's wanted to see all year. I think that they've gotten further apart, but like I would definitely love to see them both in the finals.
So to wrap it up, who does everybody think wins the national championship?
Houston, baby.
There we go.
We just spent 5 minutes talking about it, did not even mention Houston one time.
Yeah, no, they may just win it.
I'm going Gonzaga.
Gonzaga.
Gonzaga, even though I have not watched a single second of college basketball or college sports period this year.
I want to be right, so I'm going to say whoever plays against Gonzaga will win. I just want to be right.
I love it.
On the mental aspect.
Spencer?
I'd so love to see UCLA win it all, but I think I'm still going to go with Baylor.
Okay.
Yeah, now's the time to double down. I'm rolling with Baylor. I'm frightened of Gonzaga. That is how I'm just going to go ahead and conclude that. Gonzaga are unbelievable. They will have an off night against Baylor on Monday night, assuming Baylor is fortunate enough to get past Houston. Guys, I think we're pretty much out of topics, unless there was anything else you guys wanted to talk about. This has been District Divided. Once again, I'm here with Matt Regan, LC Lautaro Cabrera, Kadeen Wiggins, a.k.a. K-Dot, and Spencer Brudig, the white guy we needed on this podcast for diversity reasons. It is good to see you all again, and we'll catch you next week. Happy opening day.
Suck.
All right.
See ya.
Just do